If you played the game back between 2010 and 2014, you'll very unfondly remember Infernity,s a deck that, in addition to several YCS wins, won Worlds as well. This was one of the first decks that demonstrated just how critical hard once per turns are because of their ability to loop, in particular, summoning Trishula repeatedly to empty out the opponent's hand. Degeneracy aside, Infernities are one of my favorite archetypes. During their lull in 2012, I used them as my secondary deck, so in addition to upholding their legacy, I personally would love to see this deck become relevant again. To that end, the power level of these cards will be stronger than my usual, and you tell me just how degenerate these handless fiends can become. The premise with Infernities is that they can access their most powerful effects when your hand has 0 cards. This is done by leveraging the graveyard like a second hand, which, while pretty par for the course nowadays, and even to some degree back then, Infernities really took it up a notch by just how quickly they could cycle through bodies from the grave and turn them into extra deck summons. The main guy is Infernity Archfiend, who when summoned without cards in hand, searches you an Infernity card from the deck. Bringing him out over and over lets you search out more combo pieces and then end board pieces, namely Infernity Barrier and Infernity Break, to stifle any attempt by your opponent to do much of anything. 2 main cards historically serve as the combo enablers, Infernity Mirage and Infernity Launcher. Each of these gets you a double summon from the grave, with Launcher also assisting in emptying your hand. Necromancer is also a legacy summon from grave effect, usually netting you Archfiend or a tuner. So typically what you'll do is use one of the double summons to bring out Necromancer and Archfiend, then use their respective effects to summon a tuner from the grave plus get a search. More recently, the deck received yet another single monster revival in the form of this creepy little punk, which on top of reviving Infernities can reset itself from the grave. The bosses of the deck are Infernity Doomdragon and Void Ogre Dragon, the former which gives you a big body with the Infernity name to leverage Barrier, and the latter which suffers from not having Infernity in its name, but can negate a spell or trap when your hand is empty. Still a pretty decent effect nowadays. The deck has an additional synchro it leans on, 100 Eyes Dragon, which lets you copy the effect of your Infernities in the grave to expand your combo, most notably Mirage to get another double summon. The other half of the strategy revolves around emptying your hand, which by extension loads your grave. The premier card here is Infernity Sage, which lets you dump your hand in one fell swoop, and when it hits the grave, sends an Infernity monster from deck to grave. Sage is also a level 2 tuner, but the other 2 tuners typically used in Infernities are Infernity Avenger, a level 1 guy, and Infernity Beetle, another level 2 who contribute itself to grab 2 more from the deck. There are of course many other cards in this archetype, most of which have aged out of playability, but a couple which actually become very relevant with the custom support you're about to see. There's also a number of generic fiend support that the deck utilizes to further set up its combos and will remain relevant in this custom iteration. Kicking things off is the one new card that will be adapted from the anime, Infernity Climber. You can discard this card, send any number of cards in your hand to the grave, then you can special summon one Infernity monster from your deck whose level equals the number of cards sent. If you have no cards in hand and this card is in your grave, quick effect, you can target one Infernity monster in your grave, place it on top of your deck, then if this card is in your grave, banish it. You can only use each effect of Infernity Climber once per turn. Given the deck's requirement to empty the hand and set up the grave, it is far too slow in the modern day. This gives a much needed one card starter by not only emptying your hand, but getting the ball rolling with a combo piece straight from the deck, be that Mirage for a double summon, Archfiend for a search, or what have you. The second effect is based on its anime effect with the utility of stacking Archfiend on top of your deck or whatever else you set up for your ensuing turn. Next we have Infernity Seer, a level 1 tuner. During the turn this card is sent to the grave, you can activate one Infernity trap the turn it was set. If you have no cards in your hand, you can banish any number of fiend monsters from your grave, including this card, special summon one Infernity monster from your deck with a level equal to the total number of monsters banished to activate this effect. You can only use this effect of Infernity Seer once per turn. First effect makes your barriers live to help you push through your opponent's negates. Second effect is a great extender which works functionally like Miscellaneousaurus, but effectively like a second climber by getting you another combo piece from the deck. Moving into the extra deck, we have a Link 2 Infernity Nightmare comprised of 2 monsters, including an Infernity monster. When this card is Link summoned, you can send one Infernity monster from your hand to the grave, or if you have no cards in hand, from your deck instead. During the main phase, if you have no cards in your hand, quick effect, you can tribute this card along with 2 Dark monsters or 1 Synchro monster. Special summon 1 Synchro monster from your extra deck that requires a Dark tuner for its Synchro summon. This is treated as a Synchro summon. You can only use each effect of Infernity Nightmare once per turn. I'm totally with the folks who prefer to keep 5D's decks synchro based, but this is absolutely something Konami would do, both because they have done it with other 5Ds archetypes and because it speeds up synchro decks significantly. This card functions as an even better Cherubini for the deck, though you of course could run both to maximize the number of Foolish Burial effects at your disposal. And that second effect is a great extender to climb into a boss for your final board, as well as clearing out space for more combos. Next we have Infernity Doom Sheriff, a level 9 synchro comprised of a Dark Tuner and one or more non-tuners. Must be synchro summon. You can only summon Infernity Doom Sheriff once per turn. Cannot be targeted by card effects while you have no cards in your hand. Once per turn, if your opponent activates a card effect in their hand, quick effect, you can negate the activation. Then if you have no cards in your hand, you can destroy it. Once while this card is face up on the field, if you have no cards in your hand, you can special summon one Infernity monster from your deck with a different name from the monsters in your grave, and if you do, skip your next draw phase. Infernities lack a bona fide boss monster that has an Infernity name. This card fixes that. Beefy 3100 to stand by the barriers, helps you play against hand traps, any opponent combos that begin with activating an effect in hand, and itself is an extender for the rest of your own combos. And the final card is going to build on the last showcase on the reactors, another Dark Synchro, this one the retrain of 100 Eyes Dragon. Must be synchro summoned with the effect of a Dark Tuner monster, or special summon from your extra deck by banishing one Dark Attribute Tuner and any number of non-tuners from your grave whose difference in levels equals 8. Subtract the levels of the tuner from the total levels of the non-tuners. You can only summon Dark Synchro 100 Eyes Dragon once per turn. Once per turn, you can send one Infernity or Earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck to the grave until the end of the next turn. This card's name becomes that monster's original name, and replace this effect with that monster's original effects. In addition to the Dark Tuner way of bringing it out, this card has an alternative summoning condition, which makes it a great extender for the deck. And true to its original, it has a copy effect, but instead of copying from the grave, copies from the deck or extra deck, multiplying how expansive your toolbox is. Only one back row, that is the continuous spell, Infernity Infinity. When this card is activated, you can add one Infernity monster from your deck or grave to your hand. Immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one Infernity monster. You can send this face-up card you control to the grave, then target 3 Fiend monsters in your banishment, return them to the grave, and if you do, you can set one Infernity spell or trap from your grave. You can only use each effect of Infernity Infinity once per turn. This card does a number of things for the deck. First, it's a 1-card starter. Second, it's an extender with a much needed extra normal summon since the few Infernity who can special summon from hand are tied by a specific condition. Third, it lets you recycle your banished fiends for more plays, be that a street patrol or something banished off 100 Eyes, break, or sear. And fourth, of course, is that spell trap retrieval, which effectively gets you a second launcher. Or you can get itself back, hence, Infinity. Get your popcorn ready for this demonstration. It's gonna be a long one, so we'll start off with a 1.5 card combo. Void Apocalypse can send any card in your hand to the grave to send one Fiend monster from deck to grave, and we are going to send Fiendish Rhino Warrior, which is one of those generic Fiend supports I was talking about that can still work wonders for this deck. When that hits the grave, then you can send a Fiend monster from your deck to the grave, so we're just loading up the number of Fiend monsters that we have. We're gonna send Sage, Infernity Sage, to the graveyard from our deck, and then that's going to trigger Sage's effect, which when it is sent to the grave, you can send one Infernity monster from your deck to the grave if you have no cards in your hand. And so with that, we're going to send Infernity General. This is one of those older cards that I was talking about that wasn't really used back in the day, but becomes especially awesome with this new custom support. So now we set up the grade that we need, and before we do anything else, we're actually going to use D-Shed, as I'll call it, Dark Synchro 100 Eyes Dragon, bring it out with its alternative summoning method, which is by banishing a Dark Attribute Tuner and any number of non-tuners from your grave, as long as the level difference equals 8. You add up the non-tuners and then subtract the tuner. So that's going to be, what is that guy, 7? 7 plus 3 equals 10, and then minus 2 equals 8. So that's where we get to the D-Shed. Now we have D-Shed's effect on field. We can use it to send the Doom Sheriff from our extra deck to the grave and copy its effect, which will allow us to use that bottom effect. You can also use any of these effects if your opponent tries hand trapping you at this point, but really that last effect where we're looking at, where we can special summon an Infernity monster from our deck with a different name from the monsters in our grave. So that is going to be Infernity Archfiend, and when that is summoned with no cards in hand, we can trigger its effect to search out an Infernity card. We're going to grab Infernity Infinity. You can go ahead and activate that, and with that we will activate its effect to add an Infernity monster from our deck to our hand. We're going to add the Seer. And then with the on resolution effect, we're going to normal summon that Seer. Now we're going to synchro summon Infernity Seer and D-Shed into the Infernity Doom Sheriff. Remember, he can only be summoned once per turn, but we got its other effect. We got its effect by copying its effect through D-Shed. So that's how we get around that little limitation there. So now with D-Shed on board, we can use its effect, since that's a once per turn effect, not a hard once per turn, it's a soft once per turn. We can grab another Infernity Archfiend, since we still don't have one in the grave, and that, thanks to it not having a hard once per turn effect, will allow us to trigger its search effect, and we can search out Infernity Mirage. We haven't used our normal summon yet for the turn, so we're going to normal summon Mirage. Now we're going to link summon the two Archfiends into Infernity Nightmare. And on summon, we can send an Infernity monster from hand to the grave, or if we have no cards in hand, which we don't, we can send one from the deck instead. We're going to use that to send Necromancer from the deck to the grave. And now things are starting to look like what Infernity players may be accustomed to. You have Infernity Mirage to tribute itself to special summon two Infernity monsters from the grave. Will bring out Necromancer and Archfiend. Archfiend's effect is going to trigger to search out Launcher. And then Necromancer's effect, once we activate that launcher and empty out our hand again, we'll be able to summon a tuner from our graveyard. We are going to summon Seer. Okay, now we got our level 8 assembled. So 4, 3, and 1 will bring out the original 100 Eyes Dragon. And then we can do what folks are accustomed to doing here, copying the effect of Mirage by banishing it from the grave and then tributing it to use that Mirage effect. Bring back out the Archfiend and the Necromancer, and then Archfiend is going to get its search again. This time we're going to start assembling our end board. We're going to search out Barrier and set that. Then we'll use the Necromancer effect to bring back out Seer once again, and then we're going to go into a Void Ogre Dragon. Now we can go with our Infernity Launcher to get more bodies on board, send that to the grave to special summon 2 more Infernity monsters from our graveyard. That, of course, is going to be the Necromancer Archfiend combo. With Archfiend, we're going to once again search out one of our end board pieces, the second Barrier. And then with Necromancer's effect, as expected, we're going to bring out a tuner again. Again, that's going to be Infernity Seer. Now, before going into any more synchros, we're actually going to use Infinity's effect, which is by sending it to the grave, we can target 3 fiend monsters in our banishment, return them to the grave, and then set back one of our Infernity spell traps from our grave. We're going to add back the General, the Sage, and the Mirage. And that's going to allow us to set back the Infernity Launcher. You can go ahead and activate that after you set it. And now we're going to another 100 Eyes Dragon by synchroing Seer with Necromancer and Archfiend, and we're going to do what we just did before, where we copy that Mirage effect that we just added back to our grave with Infinity, and then use the copied effect to go again into Necromancer and Archfiend. And the reason you do that loop, for those unfamiliar, is so you can keep getting that extra search for more barriers. So go ahead and do that, and now we've got our third barrier in place. And now with Necromancer, this time we're going to bring out the Sage. So that's going to give us access to a level 9 synchro, which, if you were wondering if we were going to be able to pull this off, yes, we are. We're going to start going into Trisho. It's not going to be a full loop, but we're going to get at least somewhat there. We're going to activate the effect of Trishula, rip out a card from our opponent's hand, assuming they haven't used any hand traps. That's going to reduce them down to 4 cards in hand. And now we're going to activate the effect of Nightmare, which can tribute itself and then either 2 dark monsters or a synchro monster to bring out a synchro monster that requires a dark tuner. So we're going to tribute off that Trishula to bring out a second copy of Void Ogre. Now we're going to activate our probably need to actually place this in this zone. Now we're going to activate our launcher and bring back out Necromancer and Archfiend once more. We're going to use Archfiend's effect to search once again. This time we're going to go with Infernity Break and set that. And then with Necromancer, once again, we're going to bring out the Sage and go into another level 9 synchro, once again being Trishula. And so we're going to rip out another card from our opponent's hand. And we're still not done. Now we have that general effect. Again, I was alluding to it, and this is where it comes into play, where you can banish it to special summon 2 level 3 or lower Infernity monsters in your grave. We're going to bring out the Seer and the Sage. And with Trishula and Seer, that adds up to level 10. We can bring out Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Cheng-Ying. Probably put him in defense mode. And there you are. That is where our combo ends off. Took a while to get there. This is definitely the longest demonstration and combo that I've done. But this is what we have here. So we've ripped off 2 cards from our opponent's hand. They are assuming they haven't used any hand traps, down to 3 cards in hand. They're going to draw to a 4th card in hand. We can negate 2 spell and traps. We can negate 3. We have 3 Omni negates, whether that be a monster effect or a spell trap. And then we have a card destruction effect with Infernity Break, as well as the effect of Cheng-Ying and Doom Sheriff to negate any more effects that they activate in hand. So, and plus, our draw is cut off for the next turn because we use Doom Sheriff's effect, so we have to skip our next draw phase. So they can't just end their turn and then we draw and then, you know, we can't empty out our hand because our back row is already full. That's not a concern of ours. So we are, if you pull this combo off, you're basically guaranteed to, unless they have like a Lava Golem in a Sphere mode in hand, you're basically guaranteed to win the game. That's how powerful this loop can become. The other interesting aspect about this is that we didn't even use the effects of some of the new custom cards. We didn't use the graveyard effect of Seer. We didn't use the Climber effect from hand because we didn't even have to go through Climber. So it has a lot of backup options. If you are interrupted, it can play through interruptions. And that is where I would love for Infernities to get to again. Again, like I said, I used to use this deck. I would love to see it become relevant again. If it did, it would probably become toxic just like it used to be. And that's why I went with the approach that I did. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments and what you think of this new Infernity custom support. And that does it for the Infernity custom support. Like I said, my goal was to break the deck again, so you tell me if these cards did exactly that. But if it's too broken, call the cops. They'll put a stop to this satellite trash.